Good day everyone. My name is Journals Dianog, 20 years old, from Barangay Kamanika, Hingoog City, a Bachelor of Science intermediate student of Hingoog City Colleges. So for today, I will discuss about theories of crime causation. Classical theories of crime causation is the theory that the assumption that people are free of will and thus completely responsible for their own action, and that they also have the ability to rationally weigh off their abilities. So first is rational choice theory. So rational choice theory is the hold primarily that the people's decision to commit crime is a matter of choice. Because it was assumed that people had free will to choose their behavior. Thus, those who violated the law were motivated by personal needs such as greed, revenge, survival, and Hinduism. So there are example of rational choice theory. So dani na theory moay paghimo og krimen og dani sad na theory adunay free will sa pagpili sa mga kinaiya. Like for example, the rational choice theory is an investment banker decide to skim money from his clients' accounts and hides the loss, and then personally takes the money to fund his or her lavish lifestyle. Second is routine activity theory. So this theory, rational choice theories, holds that person will engage in criminal behavior after weighing the consequences and benefits of his or her actions. So criminal behavior is a rational choice made by a motivated offender who perceives that the chances of gain outweigh any possible punishment or loss. So this theory, Lawrence E. Cohen and Marcos K. Felson, who was created this theory. So, example of routine activity theory. So, theory routine, mao ni na theory that there are some people na gagawa sila ng mga criminal na pag-uugali. Like for example, if an offender is motivated to commit crime, he or she might not to do it if there are many people around. On the other hand, of course, if guardians are absent, a crime is more likely to occur. So, on the whole, routine activities theory sees that crime occurs when these three elements are present, namely a likely offender, a suitable target, and the absence of capable guardian. Third is lifestyle theory. So, lifestyle theory presents that a person may become a potential suspect because of the presence of potential target. Like for example, of lifestyle theory. So, if someone with a gambling or substance addiction could be an easy victim by a con artist. So this theory developed by Michael R. Gottfredson, Michael Hindilang, and James Garofalo. So fourth, general deterrence and specific deterrence theory. General deterrence and specific deterrence theory is aimed at making potential criminals fear the consequences of crime, showing that crime does not pay. It focuses a certain ways. It also manifesting societal deterrence which aim to target would-be offenders. Example of general deterrence So, the general deterrence tries to send a message to the public by making the public fearful of the consequences of committing a crime and therefore less to commit a crime. Mandatory license revocation for repeat driving while intoxicated offenses is one example of general deterrence. So fifth is victim precipitation theory. So viewed that some people may actually initiate that confrontation that eventually leads to their injury or death. It was first presented by Hans of Hintig 1941 and applies only to ways some individual violent victimization and basic premise is that by acting in certain provocative ways and some individuals initiate a chain of events that lead to their death. So, example of victim precipitation theory. In Chapter 5, Psychological Theories and Psychosexual Stages of Human Development. Psychodynamic Theory and Psychosexual Stages of Human Development. So, this theory holds that the human personality is controlled by unconscious mental processes developed in early childhood. It argues that the human drive present at birth is eros, the instinct to preserve and create life. Eros is expressed sexually, consequently, very early in their development. Human experience sexuality and at various stage, expressed by seeking pleasure through various parts of the body. So this is an example of psychosexual stages of development. So you can remember the order of these stages by using the mnemonic old oral age, anal pensioners, phallic, love, and latent grips genital. Second is behavioral theory. The behavioral theory is concerned with the study of observable behavior rather than unconscious processes. It focuses on particular stimulus and how people respond to that stimulus. It also maintains that human actions are developed through learning experiences and that behavior is learned when it is rewarded but extinguished by negative reaction or punishment. Social learning theory is the branch of behavioral theory most relevant to criminology. The experiences include personally observing others acting aggressively to achieve some goal or watching people being rewarded for violent acts on television or in the movies. So this theory created by Albert S. Bandura. So the example of social learning theory is, for example, if a child observed their parents going to work every day, volunteering at a local community center, and helping their significant other with tasks around the home, the child is likely to mimic those behaviors. If rewarded, these behaviors become reinforced and most likely repeated by the individual. Fourth is cognitive theory. It's a branch of psychology that studies the perception of reality and the mental process required to understand the world we live. It focuses on mental processes, the way the people perceive and mentally represent the words around them. So, these cognitive process include thinking, knowing, remembering, judging, and problem solving. For example, learning is an example of cognition. The way our brain makes connections as we learn concepts and different ways to remember what we have learned. Moral development suggests that people who obey the law simply to avoid punishment or who have outlooks mainly characterized by self-interest are more likely to commit crimes than those who view the law as something that benefits all of society and who honor the rights of others. So, the example of moral development. So, this theory studied by Lawrence E. Kohlberg. So, intergenerational transmission theory refers to the socialization and social learning that helps to explain the way in which children growing up in a violent family, violent roles, and subsequently may play out the roles of victim or victimizer in their own adult families as adults. So, when intergenerational transmission is strong, children turn out much like their parents and social mobility is low. For example, parents' schooling choices may directly impact their children's decision to stay in school. In generational transmissions incorporates both causal and non-causal channels. Alternative theory. Alternative theory beats the famous saying that says opposite chargers attract and also focuses assortative mating where female offenders tend to cohabit with or get married to male offenders. To convict a defendant, a jury must unanimously find proof beyond a reasonable doubt of every fact necessary to constitute the crime which he is charged, but some facts can be found less unanimously than others. Murder, for example, is illegal regardless of when it occurs, who the victim is, or how it is accomplished. So, differential association reinforcement theory. This theory suggests that the presence of criminal behavior depends on whether unrewarded or punished, and the most meaningful rewards by punishment are those given by groups that are important in an individual's life: the peer group, the family, teacher in school, and etc. In other words, people respond more readily to the reaction of the most significant people in their lives. A person becomes a criminal because of frequently criminal patterns. For example, if one is exposed to a repeated criminal scenario, this scenario will eventually rub off on others nearby. The differential association theory can differ in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. Basic conditioning theory. This theory is a conditioning claims that all human personalities may be seen in three dimensions, such as psychoticism, extroversion, and neuroticism. Those who score high on measure. So, psychoticisms are aggressive, egocentric, and impulsive. Those who score high on measure of Ex- extroversion are sensation-seeking, dominant, and assertive, while those score high or on measures of neuroticism may be described as having low self-esteem, excessive anxiety, and wide mood wings. So this theory created by Hans G. Eysenck. Integrated theory. So this theory explains predatory trait crime by showing how human nature develops from the interplay of psychological, biological, and social factors. The main concept of this theory is that the genes and environment are factors for some individuals to form the kind of personality that is likely to commit crimes. So, James Q. Wilson and Richard Julius Hurston proposed this theory. Maternal deprivation and attachment theory. The idea came after bold by experimented on infant monkeys. The said infant monkeys were given the choice between two wire monkeys. One is made of uncovered cage wire but dispersed milk, while the other is made of cage wire. Important phenomenon to social development takes place after the birth of any mammal, and that is the construction of an emotional bond between the infant and his mother. So, Edward John involved by is the British psychiatrist. Chapter 6, Sociological Theories of Crime Causation. So, social disorganization theory, crime rates are elevated in highly transient mixed use where residential and commercial property exist side by side and are changing neighborhood in which the fabric of social life has become frayed. The there are the example of sociological disorganization theory. The theory suggests that the youths from disadvantaged neighborhoods participate in, in a subculture which approves of delinquency, and that this youth thus acquire criminality in this social and cultural setting. Concentric zone theory. This theory distinct that ecological are had developed in the city of Chicago, comprising a series of 5 concentric circles or zones, and that there were stable and significant differences in interzone crime rates. So there are 5 concentric zones. So zone 1 is the central business district. It is where hotels, office, business, other commercial activities. Sa Zone 2 is a zone of transition. It is also known as gray zone. It is the tendency to conversion of land uses immediately adjacent to the CBD. It is an area that may be slated for expansion if the business is good. In this zone, land and properties are held for speculation purposes. Zone 3. Lower income working people. It is where homes or the slum are. Zone 4. High income residences. It is white collar or middle class families reside. Zone 5. Commuter zone. It is referring to the suburbs where people who work in the center choose to live. For example, downtown is the business area, or on the outskirts of town might be the suburbs. These terms that we use are just the more common method of using a concentric zone model. So, according to the concentric zone model, the zone 5 zone is a very important to given in any city. Anomy theory is one in which roles of behavioral norms have broken down or become inoperative during periods of rapid social change or social crises such as war or famine. Anomy most likely occurs in societies that are moving forward from mechanical solidarity of organic solidarity. So, for example, if the society does not provide enough jobs that been living with so that we can work to survive. So, many will turn to criminal methods of earnings a living. So former turn deviance and crimes are in large part a result of anomy, a state of social disorder. So the string theory, this theory the crime is a function of the conflict between the goals people have the means that they can use to legal obtain that goals. Consequently, those who fail to attain their goals because of inadequate means would be felt anger, frustration, and resentment, which are referred as strain, and that those people who are strained is pressured by developed criminal or delinquent solution to the problem of attaining goals. So this theory is the ideas of anomitochronology is who created this theory is Robert K. Merton. So relative deprivation theory. Criminal motivation is fueled both by perceived humiliation and the perceived right to humiliate a victim in return. Accordingly, lower class people might feel both deprived and impaired when they compare their life circumstances to those who are more affluent. So the relative deprivation is a feeling that you are generally worse off than the people you associate when compare yourself to. For example, when you can only afford on hat but your neighbor have big house, you feel relatively deprived. General strength theory. This theory suggests that criminality is the direct result of negative affective states that in it frustration, depression, disappointment, and other adverse emotions that derive from strain. So examples include parental rejection, criminal victimization, a desperate need for money, and discrimination. These trends increase crime for several reasons Several reasons, most notably they lead to a range of negative emotions which create pressure for corrective action. Robert Agnew, the sociologist who created this theory. So, cultural deviance theory. This theory combines the effects of social disorganization, band trend to explain how people living in deteriorated neighborhood react to social isolation, bad economics deprivation. Because of the draining, frustrating, and dispiriting experiences, members of the lower class create an independent subculture with its own set of rules and values. Delinquent subculture theory. The theory in his classic book, Delinquent Boys, Cohen's position was delinquent behavior of lowest class youth is actually a protest against the norms and values of the middle class culture because the social condition make them incapable of achieving success legitimately. Lower class youths experience a form of culture conflict that Cohen labels status prostration. So, differential opportunity theory. This theory is a combination of strength and disorganization principle into portrayal of a gang sustaining criminal subculture. The main concept of this theory state that people is strata society share the same success goals but those in the lower class have limited means of achieving them. So this theory created by Richard E. Clovard and Lloyd E. Hollis is the classic work of differential opportunity theory. So drift theory viewed the process of becoming a criminal as a learning experience in which potential delinquents and criminal master techniques that enable them to counterbalance or neutralize conventional values and drift back and forth between illegitimate conventional behavior. Neutralization theory is identified with the writing of David C. in 1930 to 2018 and his associate Grisham in Sykes 1922 to 2010. Differential association theory. He believed criminal behavior is learned by interaction with others, and this include learning the techniques of committing crime, and the motives drive rationalization and attitudes for committing it. Containment theory. It can assume that for every individual, there exists a containing external structure and protective external structure, both of which provide defense, protection, or insulation against delinquency. Social band theory. So social band theory are also called social control theory. Causes of delinquency now the dominant version of control theory. He assumes that all individuals are potential violators, but they are kept under control because they fear that illegal behavior will damage their relationship with friends, parents, neighbors, teachers, and employers. So for example of social band theories, because of social band theory, people have formed many relationship with family. members and peers over the course of their lives and officially accepted the social condition and expectation that come with well being a part of the society. They are unlikely to commit crimes against another person. Social reaction or labeling theory. He explained that society creates through a system of social control agencies that designate label certain individuals as delinquent, thereby stigmatizing a person and encouraging them to accept this negative personal identity. So social reaction. So there is the example of social reaction. A person who volunteers to stay late at work is usually seen as work is of a person who volunteers to stay late at work is usually seen as worthy of praise. But if a person has been labeled as a thief, people might be suspicious that they will steal something. For some people, once a deviance label has been applied, this can actually lead to more deviance. So, primary deviance and secondary deviance. Primary deviance is involved norm violation or crimes that have very little influence on the actor and can be quickly forgotten. Secondary deviance occurs when a deviance event comes to the attention of significant others or social control agent to apply a negative label. So, primary deviance refers to the initial act of deviance. If the person continues to veer away from acceptable behavior, then their actions are titled secondary. Let's say Susan continues to steal store items as she enters her teenage year. She gets into trouble with the police and gets labeled a thief. Economic theories of crime causation. Economic model of criminal behavior or basic theory. The economic model of crime in 1968 by Gary Sbacher 1930 to 2014 is a standard model of decision making where individuals choose between criminal activity on the basis of the expected utility from those acts. It is assumed that participation in criminal activity is the result of an optimizing individual responding to incentives. So Gary is Beaker who the dynamic model of crime. So Karl Marx theory. Karl Heinrich Marx in 1818 and 1883 is his famous Communist Manifesto in 1848 viewed crime as the product of law enforcement policies, a kind of leveling process theory. He also saw connection between criminality and the inequities. So, found in the capitalist system, he states believed that its development had turned workers into a dehumanized mass who live an existence that was at the mercy of their capitalist employers. So Karl Heinrich Marx is the famous of Communist Manifesto. Friedrich Engels and Wilhelm Bonger's theory. So Friedrich Engels in 1820 to 1895 in his work The Condition of the Working Class in England in 1844 portrayed crime as a function of social demoralization a collapse of people's humanity reflecting a decline in society. Workers are demoralized by the capitalist society, are caught up in the process that leads to crime and violence. While William A. Bunger in 1876 to 1940 is famous for her Marxist socialist concept of crime causation, which were published in 1916, Bungers believed that crime is of social and not biological origin, but exemption of few special cases crime lies within the boundaries of normal human behavior. So the work of private angels is the condition of the working class in England. Then William E. Bunger is the famous of Marxist socialist concept of crime causation. In biopsychosocial theories of crime causation, biopsychosocial model of crime causation, the biosocial theory of crime causation is an integration of combination of both the bio, psycho, and socio. So the bio is the components of this theory, examines aspects of biology that influence health. This might include things like brain changes, genetics or functioning of major body organs, such as the liver, the kidneys, or even the motor system. So the psycho is the component of the theory examines psychological components, things like thoughts, emotions, or behaviors. John might go through many different psychological changes. The social the social component of the biosocial model examines social factors that might influence at the health of an individual, things like our interaction with others of our culture or our economics. So, for example, let's say Juan has an accident that leaves her with reduced movement in her right arm. So this biological change might influence how she feels about herself, which could lead to depression or anxiety in certain situations. So moral insanity and criminal responsibility was a term used to describe persons who were normal in all respect except that something was wrong with a part of the brain that regulates affective responses. So according to Maudsley, some people may be considered either insane or criminal. So according to the standpoint from which they are looked at, he believed that for many persons, crime is an outlet which their unsound tendencies are discharged. So, premenstrual syndrome refers to a state of the menstrual cycle that triggers excessive amount of the female sex hormones which affect antisocial aggressive behavior. Battered child syndrome. The battered child syndrome published in 1962, the syndrome does not establish the culpability of any particular person. Rather, it simply indicates that a child found with serious repeated injuries has not suffered those injuries by accidental means, and also a medical diagnosis based on evidence indicating that the child has been subjected to a pattern of serious and unexplained abuse. So, battered woman syndrome is a psychological term used to describe women who are stuck within or have recently lived and violent relationship characterized by the cycle of violence. Battered woman syndrome is the model after the post-traumatic stress syndrome suffered by Vietnam veterans by Lenore E. Walker. So, postpartum stress syndrome and postpartum psychosis causes feelings of anxiety and self-doubt. The woman wants to become a perfect mother and wife, but at the same time, she feels exhausted and overwhelmed. Women experiencing postpartum stress syndrome usually function fairly well, and thousand women developing BP within a few days after childbirth, if it can dramatically affect everyone involved. 6 is political or social conflict theories of crime causation. So, a Marxist criminology views crime as a function of the capitalist mode of product. Within this system, economic competitiveness is the essence of social life and controls the form and function of social institution. So, Marx's criminology is the theory of Karl Marx, which says that society's classes are the cause of struggle and that society should have no classes. An example of Marxism is replacing private ownership with cooperative ownership. Noun or cooperative. Conflict theory views crime as the outcome of class struggle. The class that are struggling here are the upper, middle, and lower class. Have notes conflict works to promote crime by creating a social atmosphere in which the law is a mechanism for controlling dissatisfied have not members of the society, while the wealthy will maintain their position power. For example of conflict theory, describe the relationship between employers and employees as one of the conflict, in which the employees wish to pay as little as possible for the employees' labor, while the employees wish to maximize their wage. So, social reality of crime. So, social reality of crime is embrace a conflict model of crime who integrated his beliefs about power, society, and criminality into a theory referred to as the social reality of crime. So, according to him, criminal definition of the law represent the interests those who hold power in society. So, left realism. According to this view, cannot be attributed to a single cause, nor does it represent a single underlying, because people are influenced by different factors as they mature. So, postmodern theory focuses on the critical analysis of communication and language in legal codes and believes that language is the value-laden and can promote the same sort of inequities that are present in the rest of the social structure. Institutive or constitutive theory. Institutive or constitutive theory is defined crime as the applicant or of harm to others. People who are defined as committing criminal acts are at the same time being made unequal or disrespected. So, crime of repression occurs when members or group are prevented from achieving their fullest potential because of racism, sexism, or some other status bias. So, crime of reduction occurs when the offended party experiences a loss of some quality relative to his or her present standing. So, conservatism and liberalism theory assume that The ideal society is one in which authority is unquestioned. The hierarchy or of wisdom and virtue is accepted by all as based on recognizing natural inequalities. Liberalism assumes that the ideal society is one in which there is inequality of opportunity and general consensus to accept differences in words as the outcome of fair competition. Radicalism. Radicalism's main notion is replace the defective societies, whether left or right, radical ideology inventions, the ideal society as one in which people naturally creative and freedom-loving are able to do as they please and going about their peaceful business without interference by anyone, especially those claiming of representing some presumed higher authority. Last is identity fusion theory. So, identity fusion theory is defined as a visceral feeling of oneness with the associated with a group that is associated with increased permeability of the boundary, the personal and social life. And that would be all. Thank you.